The phone rang at 2:11 a.m. Not vibrated. Not buzzed quietly on the nightstand. Rang. That kind of ring only happens when someone wants to be answered now, when they've already decided your sleep doesn't matter. I didn't move right away. I stared at the ceiling and listened to it ring again. Then again, cutting through the dark like an alarm meant for emergencies. My son's name flashed on the screen. That alone told me something was wrong. He never called that late. Not ever. If he needed money, he texted. If he wanted something handled quietly, he emailed. Calls meant urgency or panic. I picked up on the fourth ring. "What's wrong?" I asked. He didn't say hello. "Send $50,000, he snapped. No explanation, no greeting, no hesitation. Just a demand, fired into the dark. I sat up slowly, heart already beating faster. The room suddenly too quiet around me. "Are you hurt?" I asked. "Is someone in danger?" "No," he barked. "Just send it. Now." I swung my legs off the bed and planted my feet on the floor, grounding myself. "Why?" I asked. There was a sharp inhale on the other end. Then his voice rose. "That's none of your business." I flinched, not at the volume but at the tone. I'd heard that tone before. Not fear, not desperation. Entitlement. "Lower your voice," I said, "and tell me what's going on." He laughed. A short, ugly sound. "You always do this," he said. "You ask questions like you're in charge." I closed my eyes. $50,000, he continued, louder now. "Wire it. Tonight. Or don't call me again." The words hung there. Or don't call me again. Not please. Not I need help. An ultimatum. I felt something inside me go very still. I'd helped him before. More times than I could count. Quietly. Without receipts. Without lecture. I'd covered mistakes, bridged gaps. Smoothed consequences he never fully understood because he'd never had to sit inside them. I had told myself that was parenting. But listening to my own son threatened to erase me. Unless I paid a ransom he refused to explain. Something finally snapped into focus. "Who told you to call me like this?" I asked. Silence. Then defensive. "That doesn't matter." It mattered. Because this wasn't him thinking. This was him relaying. "Are you in trouble?" I asked again. "Legal trouble?" "No," he snapped. "Just send it." Then, "I'm not sending anything," I said calmly. That's when he screamed. Not raised his voice. Screamed. "You don't get to say no. You owe me. You always make things harder than they have to be." I pulled the phone slightly away from my ear and waited for him to finish. When he finally stopped, breathing hard, I spoke. "I'm not wiring money I don't understand," I said. "And I'm not being spoken to like that." There was a long pause. Then he said it. "Fine. Goodbye." And he hung up. I sat there in the dark, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to nothing. No callback. No apology. No explanation. Just the echo of his voice. Angry. Confident. Certain I would cave the way I always had. I didn't call him back. I didn't text. I didn't try to fix it. I lay back down and stared at the ceiling until morning. At 9:17 a.m., my bank called. "Sir," the woman said carefully, "we're flagging a high-risk attempted transfer associated with your account." I sat up. "I didn't authorize any transfer," I said. "That's what we thought," she replied. "However, someone contacted us earlier claiming urgency and authority." My stomach tightened. "Who?" I asked. She paused. "Your son." I closed my eyes. She continued. "Our fraud unit reached out to him directly for verification." "And?" I asked. Another pause. "He became hostile," she said. "We've locked the account pending review." That was when I understood something important. The call at 2:11 a.m. wasn't about money. It was about control. And for the first time in his life, I had refused to hand it over. I didn't hear from him again that morning. That told me more than any explanation ever could. When people issue ultimatums, they expect immediate obedience or immediate collapse. Silence confuses them. It creates a vacuum where confidence starts leaking out. By noon, I had 3 missed calls, all from numbers I didn't recognize. I didn't answer. Not because I was afraid of what I'd hear, but because I needed to understand why he'd called me at 2:11 a.m., demanding $50,000 like it was pocket change. I called the bank back instead. They transferred me to someone in fraud prevention. Calm voice. Practiced neutrality. The kind of tone that means they've already seen enough to take this seriously. He contacted us shortly after midnight, she said. Said there was an emergency transfer that had to be processed before morning. Did he have authorization? I asked. No, she replied. He attempted to assert it. Assert. That word stuck with me. He knew personal details, she continued, enough to raise concern. But when we asked clarifying questions, his answers became inconsistent. Inconsistent how? She didn't say outright. She didn't have to. Fraud departments don't flag people because they're rude. They flag them because stories don't line up. What happens now? I asked. The account is locked temporarily, she said. Out of caution. We'll need to verify intent before any movement. And my son? I asked. There was a pause. He was informed, she said carefully, and advised not to attempt further contact with the institution. I thanked her and hung up. That was when the messages started. Not calls. Texts. Short at first. Answer your phone. This is serious. You're making this worse. I read them once, then set the phone face down and made myself coffee. By the time I finished the cup, the tone had shifted. Why would you do this to me? They're asking questions. You embarrassed me. Embarrassed. Not I'm scared. Not I messed up. Embarrassed. That told me exactly where his priorities were. I replied once. You told me not to call you again. 3 dots appeared instantly. Then disappeared. Then appeared again. Finally, a message came through. That's not what I meant. Of course it wasn't. People never mean ultimatums once they're enforced. I didn't respond. Around mid-afternoon, I got a call from a different number, local. I almost didn't answer. Then Dad, he said immediately. His voice sounded different, not loud. Not sharp, tight. What's going on? He asked. Why is the bank involved? I leaned back in my chair and looked out the window. You called them, I said. They didn't need to freeze everything. He snapped. They're treating me like a criminal. They're treating the situation like risk, I replied. Which it is. He exhaled sharply. You don't understand, he said. I needed that money today. Then you should have been able to explain why, I said. Silent, not defensive silence. Calculating silence. Who else knows about this? I asked. What do you mean? He said quickly. Who else is waiting for that money? I pressed. His breathing changed. Just answer the question. I said. Is someone pressuring you? No, he said too fast. I let the silence stretch. I'm trying to help you, I said calmly. But I won't do it blind. His voice rose slightly. You're not helping. You're making it worse. Then explain it, I said. Start from the beginning. Another pause. Then finally, I can't. That was the moment I knew, not suspected. Knew this wasn't a favor gone wrong. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was containment. Is this legal trouble? I asked again. No, he said. It's just complicated. Complicated means layered. I replied. Layered means you didn't get here alone. He didn't deny it. I told you, he said. Voice hardening again. You should have just sent it. No, I said quietly. You should have just told the truth. The call ended shortly after that. not with a goodbye with a click. That evening, I received an email from the bank. Subject line: unusual activity. Confirmation required. It wasn't accusatory. It was procedure. Someone had attempted to initiate a secondary transfer using partial verification. Someone had failed identity checks. Someone had become aggressive with staff. Someone had triggered escalation. The next morning, a number I did recognize called. My brother. I got a strange call, he said after a brief hello. Your son was asking about borrowing money. That settled it. He hadn't just demanded $50,000 from me. He'd started canvassing. Did he say why? I asked. He said it was temporary, my brother replied. Something about needing to cover a gap. A gap. That word again. I thanked him and hung up. By midday I knew this wasn't about helping my son out of a tight spot. It was about plugging a hole that was already leaking fast. He called again that night. This time, there was no yelling. Dad, he said quietly, I messed up. I stayed silent. I just need a little time. He continued, if I can just move some things around. Stop, I said. He stopped. I won't give you money. I don't understand, I said, and I won't lie to institutions for you. I'm not asking you to lie, he said weakly. You already did, I replied, when you called the bank pretending you had authority. He inhaled sharply. They said something about fraud, he admitted. Is that serious? That question, that exact phrasing told me everything. Yes, I said. It is. He didn't speak for a long time. Then he whispered, I didn't think it would get this far. That's when I realized something important. He hadn't thought at all. He had reacted, demanded, assumed, and when that didn't work, he panicked. Who else is involved? I asked. Again, his voice dropped. I can't say. Then this conversation is over, I said. Wait, he said quickly. Please. I closed my eyes. You gave me a choice, I reminded him. Send the money or don't call you again. He was quiet. I chose the second option, I said. The line went dead, not because I hung up, because he did. That night, I slept better than I had in years, because for the first time, I wasn't cushioning consequences that weren't mine. And somewhere, in an office, or a bank branch, or a place where raised voices don't help, people were asking him questions he couldn't answer. The first thing people misunderstand about situations like this is where the danger actually comes from. They think it's the money, or the argument, or the threat. It's none of those. The danger comes when the questions start, and you don't have clean answers. By the third morning, I knew something had shifted. I hadn't heard from my son since he hung up the night before, but my phone hadn't gone quiet either. It buzzed periodically with unknown numbers, missed calls that left no voicemail, automated notifications from my bank confirming the account remained restricted pending review. No urgency in the messages. No arguments, just confirmation that a process had started. And once processes begin, they don't stop because someone panics. Late that morning, my attorney called. Not because I'd asked him to, because the bank had. They reached out to confirm your position, he said. They're documenting everything. Documenting what? I asked. Intent, he replied. And behavior. That word again. Behavior. Your son made several attempts to bypass protocol, he continued. That's what escalated the. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. He called them pretending he was me, didn't he? I asked. There was a brief pause. He implied authority, my attorney said carefully. Enough that it raised concern. Concern. Banks don't escalate for tone, they escalate for patterns. What happens next? I asked. That depends on whether this stays internal, he said, or becomes something else. Something. That was the moment I understood this had crossed the line from family conflict into institutional attention, the kind that doesn't forget names, dates, or voices. That afternoon, my son finally called. He didn't start with money this time. He started with anger, quieter, sharper, controlled. They're treating me like I tried to steal from you, he said. I didn't answer right away. Did you? I asked. He scoffed. That's ridiculous. Then, answer their questions, I said. Silence. Not the silence of reflection. The silence of someone replaying conversations they wish they could undo. They want explanations, he said finally. They're asking why I needed the money so urgently. And? I asked. And they keep asking who else was involved. There it was. Who is involved? I asked. Calmly. No one, he said. Again, too fast. I let it go. People tell the truth when they run out of time, not when they're comfortable. They also asked why I didn't go through normal channels. He continued. Why I called you at 2 a.m. I nodded to myself. And why did you? I asked. He hesitated. Because I thought you'd just do it. That honesty came too late to help him, but it told me everything. You didn't call because it was urgent, I said. You called because you assumed I'd panic. That's not. You assumed I'd protect you. I continued, like I always have. He didn't deny it. They asked about previous transfers, he said quietly. About patterns. My jaw tightened. Patterns. That's when it got uncomfortable, he admitted. Because I didn't know what to say. I could picture it clearly now. Him sitting across from someone trained to notice inconsistencies. Someone who didn't care about his tone or his frustration. Someone who only cared whether the story matched the data. What did you tell them? That it was a family matter, he said. That you'd misunderstood. And when they asked for proof, I asked. He exhaled sharply. I didn't have any. That was when the fear finally crept into his voice. They asked me if anyone else had access to your account, he said. If I'd ever moved money before without your knowledge. I closed my eyes. What did you say? I asked. That I wasn't sure, he whispered. That answer alone would have set off alarms. Did they mention law enforcement? I asked. He didn't respond. Did they? I repeated. They said the word referral. He said quietly. Referral. Banks don't throw that word around casually. That's serious, I said. I didn't think it would go there. He snapped suddenly. Panic leaking through the cracks. I thought they'd just block it and move on. They did block it, I replied. You're the one who kept pushing. There was a long pause on the line. Then he said something I didn't expect. They asked me about you, whether you were aware of the transfer attempt. My stomach tightened. That's standard, I said carefully. It doesn't mean anything by itself. But then he continued. They asked if anyone had pressured me to request the money. I laughed quietly. Not because it was funny, but because of the irony. And? I asked. And I said no, he replied. Another mistake. Because now his story had locked into place. And if it changed later, it would change against him. That evening, I got another call from my bank. This one was brief. We've escalated the review. The representative said. Your son has been notified. You don't need to take any action at this time. Not thank you. Not we're sorry. Just you're done here. When institutions stop asking questions, it's because they've started answering them internally. The next morning, my brother called again. He showed up at my place, he said. Looked rough. What did he want? I asked. Money, he said. And advice. I closed my eyes. Did you give him either? I asked. No, he replied. But he said something that worried me. What? I asked. He said if he couldn't fix this fast, other people were going to get angry. There it was. Not just embarrassment. Not just consequences. Pressure. Did he say who? I asked. No, my brother said. But he didn't sound like he was talking about you. That night, my son called again. This time, his voice was stripped bare. "They're not calling me back," he said. "No one will tell me what's happening." "That's how it works once review starts," I said. "I think I'm in trouble," he whispered. I let the silence stretch. Then I spoke. "You are," I said. "But not because you needed money." "Then why?" he asked. "Because you demanded it," I replied. "And because when someone said no, you tried to go around them." He started breathing faster. "I didn't mean. Intent doesn't erase behavior," I said. "And behavior is what systems respond to." "I need your help," he said desperately. "Please." I closed my eyes. "I already helped you," I said. "By saying no before this got worse." He didn't understand that yet. But he would. Because somewhere in a building with glass walls and neutral carpeting, people were reviewing timestamps, recordings, call logs, and the most dangerous part wasn't that he'd asked for $50,000. It was that he'd shown them who he was when told no. He didn't call me the next day. That alone told me the questions had gotten sharper. When people are still lying, they talk. They argue. They rehearse. When the truth starts pressing in from all sides, they go quiet, not to think, but to survive. By late afternoon, my attorney called again. "This is moving," he said. "Moving how?" I asked. "They've widened the scope," he replied, "which means they've identified risk beyond the initial transfer attempt." Beyond? That word carried weight. "Have they contacted you directly?" I asked. "Not yet," he said. "That usually comes after they finish mapping behavior. Mapping. Patterns. Connections. Escalations. Institutions don't chase feelings. They trace lines." That evening, my son finally showed up at my door. Not angry. Not demanding. Deflated. He stood there longer than necessary before knocking, a man rehearsing which version of himself might still be received. When I opened the door, he looked thinner somehow. Not physically. Structurally, like something essential had been stripped away. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside. He sat on the edge of the couch, elbows on knees, hands clasped together so tightly his knuckles were pale. He didn't look at me right away. "They know," he said. "Know what?" I asked. He swallowed. "Why I needed the money." I didn't interrupt. "They figured it out," he continued. "Or enough of it." "From who?" I asked. He hesitated. "From me," he said quietly. "And from someone else." There it was. "Who?" I asked. He rubbed his face with both hands. "I can't say names," he muttered. "But it started as an opportunity." An opportunity. That word people use when they want to dress greed up as initiative. "Go on," I said. He stared at the floor. "It was supposed to be short-term," he said. "A flip. Quick money. No risk. No risk." He laughed bitterly at his own words. "Except there was risk," he continued. "I just didn't want to see it." "What kind of flip?" I asked. He hesitated again, longer this time. "Crypto adjacent," he said. "Private placements. Not public exchanges." I nodded slowly. That explained the urgency, the secrecy, the refusal to explain. "Who pitched it to you?" I asked. He didn't answer. "You don't have to protect them," I said. "They're not protecting you." He flinched. "They said I could scale fast," he said. "That timing mattered. That if I missed the window I'd lose my position." "And you already had money in," I said. "Yes," he admitted. "A lot." "How much?" I asked. He whispered the number. It was more than I expected. "And the 50,000? I asked. "That was to keep it from collapsing," he said. "Margin. Fees. Whatever you want to call it. To keep it from collapsing. That's not an investment. That's a fire break." "Why not go to a bank?" I asked. "They wouldn't touch it," he said quickly. Too opaque. Too fat. So you came to me, I said. He nodded. Because you'd never asked questions before, he said. That one hurt. Not because it was cruel, but because it was accurate. What changed? I asked. They demanded proof of funds, he said. Immediately, or they'd liquidate my position. And, I asked. And I didn't have it, he admitted. Not liquid. Not clean. That word again. What made it not clean? I asked. He didn't answer right away. Because some of it wasn't mine, he said finally. I closed my eyes. Whose was it? I asked. He shook his head. I can't, he whispered. That's where it gets dangerous. Dangerous how? He looked up at me then. Really looked, and for the first time, I saw fear instead of entitlement. They don't like delays, he said, and they don't like banks. There it was. Not just risk. Pressure. Is this illegal? I asked. He swallowed. It's adjacent, he said. Adjacent. The favorite word of people standing just close enough to a cliff to pretend they're still on solid ground. That's why the fraud unit calling you first mattered, I said. It wasn't just about me, he nodded. When they called me, he said, the people involved freaked out. Because it creates a record, I said. Yes, he replied. And because they didn't want attention. Then why push harder? I asked. Why threaten me? He laughed bitterly. Because I panicked, he said. And because threatening you has always worked. That silence that followed was heavy. You didn't just risk money, I said. You risked exposure. I didn't think they'd flag it, he said. I thought they'd just transfer it. That's because you don't understand systems, I replied. You understand leverage. He stared at his hand. They told me if the transfer failed, he said. They'd assume I couldn't cover my position. And, I asked. And then things would get uncomfortable. Uncomfortable. Did they threaten you? I asked. He hesitated. Not directly, he said, but they made expectations clear. I leaned back. So let me understand, I said. Slowly. You woke me up at demanded $50,000 without explanation. Screamed at me when I asked questions. Tried to go around me by calling the bank, and now you're surprised this escalated. He didn't respond. Because there was nothing left to say. The bank didn't just flag a transfer, I continued. They flagged behavior. They flagged urgency. They flagged pressure. I know, he whispered. And once that happens, I said, they start looking backward. His breathing quickened. They asked about previous transfers, he said. About patterns. And, I told them the truth, he said. That you'd helped me before, I nodded. That won't hurt you, I said. But what you did this time might. He looked up, eyes wide. What do I do now? He asked. I stood. You stop trying to fix this with money, and you stop involving me. But no, I cut in. This is bigger than family now. He slumped back against the couch. They're calling me again tomorrow, he said. The fraud unit. They want a full statement. That's inevitable, I replied. Should I get a lawyer? He asked. I didn't answer right away. Yes, I said. You should have already. He nodded slowly. I never meant to put you in this position, he said. I know, I replied. You meant to use me. That truth landed hard. He stood up unsteadily. I don't know how to get out of this, he said. You don't, I replied. You go through it. He nodded. At the door he turned back. You really won't help me, he asked. I met his eyes. I already did, I said, by refusing to become part of the problem. He left without another word. That night I slept. Not peacefully, but clearly. Because now I knew what the $50,000 really was. Not help. Not emergency. Not family. It was a test, and when I failed it, the systems packed. The next morning didn't arrive with drama. It arrived with paperwork. That's how you know something has gone wrong in a way that can't be argued with. No raised voices. No ultimatums. Just emails, calendar holds, and language so neutral it feels almost polite. My son texted me at 7. They want to speak to me again. Not can we talk, not I'm scared. I didn't respond. Because by then, this wasn't something a father could intervene in without making it worse. By mid-morning, my attorney called. They've scheduled a formal interview, he said. Fraud unit, compliance present. How formal, I asked. Recorded, he replied. Documented. Non-adversarial, but only on paper. Non-adversarial is what institutions call it when they don't need to threaten you, when your own words are enough. They'll ask him to walk through the timeline, he continued. Every call, every attempt, every explanation. I pictured my son sitting in a small room telling the same story over and over again, watching people write things down without reacting. That's when panic really sets in, because when no one reacts, you don't know which part hurt you. Late that afternoon he called. I almost didn't answer. I did anyway. They're asking me to come in, he said. Voice thin. In person. That was always coming. I replied. They say it's just clarification, he said. But they keep saying things like material misrepresentation. That phrase doesn't come from nowhere. Did they ask you about the people you're involved with? I asked. Yes, he said immediately. And that's the problem. I waited. They want names, he continued. They want to know where the money was supposed to go, and I asked. I told them I didn't have it, he said. Not all of it. I closed my eyes. What did they say? I asked. They asked why, he replied. Why I was moving money that wasn't fully mine. There it was. That's not a question you can dodge, I said. I tried, he admitted. I said it was temporary. And, I asked. And they asked temporary for whom? That's the question that ends story, because temporary only exists if someone else is permanent. They asked if anyone else was pressuring me. He said, if anyone had threatened consequences if the transfer failed. I leaned back in my chair. And what did you say? I asked. I said no, he replied quickly. I said it was my idea. That was his instinct. To absorb blame, not because he was noble, but because he thought it would contain the damage. It wouldn't. Did they believe you? I asked. He didn't answer. I can hear it in your silence. I said. They did. He exhaled sharply. They asked about the call to you, he said. The time. The wording. My jaw tightened. They have the recording. I said. Yes, he replied quietly. They played it back. I pictured it, his own voice coming back at him through a speaker. Demanding. Raised. Certain. What did they say? I asked. They asked why I threatened you, he whispered. Threatened. That word changes everything. I told them I was emotional. He said. That I didn't mean. And they asked why emotion makes you demand $50,000 at 2:11 a.m., I said. Yes, he replied. There was a long pause. I don't think they see this as a mistake, he said finally. No, I said. They see it as behavior. That afternoon, things outside the bank started closing in too. The people he'd gotten involved with stopped being patient. He didn't tell me everything, but he didn't have to. They're asking questions, he said later that evening, about why the transfer didn't happen. What did you tell them? I asked. That the bank froze it, he said. That it's temporary. And, I asked. They don't like that answer. He said. Of course they didn't. Because people who operate in gray spaces rely on speed and silence. Banks are slow. Banks record. Banks remember. They told me I need to fix this, he said. Soon. And can you? I asked. No, he admitted. That's when the room really started shrinking. Because pressure from both sides leaves no exits. The bank wants clarity. The outside parties want money. and neither care about excuses. They asked me if you'd ever sent large transfers before, he said quietly, if there was precedent, and I asked. I said yes, he replied, but that it was different. Was it? I asked. No, he said, not really. That admission mattered more than he realized, because precedent explains expectation, and expectation explains entitlement. That night, I received a formal notice from my bank. Not a warning, a summary. It outlined the attempted transfer, the unauthorized contact, the escalation. It stated plainly that the account would remain restricted, pending resolution. No mention of family. No mention of emotion, just facts. I forwarded it to my attorney and closed my laptop. My son called again after midnight. This time, there was no anger left. They're telling me to get legal counsel, he said. You should, I replied. They asked if I understood the implications, he said, of trying to move money under false authority. That's serious, I said. I know, he whispered. There it was, the moment when confidence fully collapses. They asked me if I'd do it again, he continued, if given the chance, and I asked. I didn't answer, he said. That was the worst answer he could have given, because silence reads as possibility. I didn't think saying no would do this, he said quietly. I thought you'd cave. I always had before, I replied. I know, he said. That's why this feels different. Different, because it was. For the first time he was sitting alone inside consequences. I hadn't softened. No money could fix that. No transfer could erase the record. And no apology could rewind the call at 2:11 a.m. They're calling me again tomorrow, he said. They want a full statement. You should tell the truth, I said. He laughed weakly. That's what I'm afraid of, he said, because the truth wasn't just risky. It implicated others, it created trails, it forced decisions. After we hung up, I sat alone in the quiet. I didn't feel victorious. I felt resolved, because what was happening now was inevitable. The moment he chose entitlement over explanation, the systems didn't target him. They responded to him, and once that response begins, it doesn't care how late it is, how desperate you sound, or who you thought would save you. The night before his final meeting with the bank, my son didn't sleep. I know that because he called me at 3:38 a.m. Not to ask for money, not to shout, not to threaten, to talk. His voice sounded hollow, like someone speaking from inside a room that had slowly emptied. I keep replaying it, he said. That call, the way I spoke to you. I didn't interrupt. I didn't think it would follow me, he continued. I didn't think one phone call could do this. It wasn't one call, I said. It was a pattern that finally got documented. He exhaled slowly. They asked me to bring everything, he said. Statements, messages, names. I leaned back in my chair. That's how clarity works, I replied. It removes ambiguity. There was a long pause. Do you hate me? He asked. That question didn't come from guilt. It came from fear. No, I said. I don't hate you. Then why didn't you save me? He asked. I closed my eyes. Because saving you would have meant lying, I said. And lying would have made this worse. He was quiet for a long time. I thought family meant protection, he said finally. It means truth, I replied. Protection without truth turns into permission. He didn't argue, because somewhere along the way he had finally understood that I wasn't punishing him. I was stepping out of the way of consequences that belonged to him. The next day he went in. He didn't call me beforehand. He didn't call me during, he called me afterward. They know everything, he said. Not they think, not they suspect. No, they asked me to walk through the timeline, he continued. Every attempt, every call, every explanation. And, I asked. I couldn't keep it straight, he admitted, because the story changed too many times. That's the problem with lies. They don't age well. They asked about the outside pressure, he said. About the people I was dealing with. I waited. I told them, he said quietly. My chest tightened. All of it? I asked. Yes, he replied. Names, numbers, messages. That was the moment the story passed a point of no return. Because once multiple parties are named, the focus widens. This was no longer about a father and son. It was about networks. They asked why I didn't just walk away, he said. And what did you say? I said I didn't think I could, he replied. That answer mattered. Because coercion changes how responsibility is measured. They told me something, he continued. Something I didn't expect. What? I asked. They said the reason this escalated wasn't the amount, he said. It was the way I tried to force it. Exactly. Demanding. Threatening. Bypassing. That's what turned this into fraud, he said. Not the money. I nodded. They told me the transfer attempt triggered protections, he added, because it looked like elder financial abuse. That phrase hit hard. Elder financial abuse. They asked if you felt pressured, he said, if you felt threatened. I closed my eyes. What did you tell them? I asked. That you said no, he replied. And I didn't stop. Silence followed. They said that mattered, he said. A lot. Of course it did. Because consent is binary. And no is not negotiable. They're referring part of this, he said quietly. To who? I asked. Compliance and law enforcement, he replied. There it was. The final line crossed. Not because I wanted it. Because records don't care about intentions. I'm probably going to be charged with something, he said. Maybe, I replied. Or maybe you'll be required to cooperate. Either way, he said. My life's not the same. No, I agreed. It isn't. He didn't cry. He didn't beg. He just sat inside that truth. I lost them, he said suddenly. Who? I asked. The people I was dealing with, he replied. Once I told the bank everything, they disappeared. That's how you know they were never partners. They were pressure. And now? I asked. And now I'm alone, he said. That wasn't an accusation. It was an observation. Dad, he said after a long pause. If I could go back, I stopped him. You can't, I said. And you shouldn't try, he swallowed. I thought giving you an ultimatum would force you to help, he admitted. I didn't think you'd choose nothing. I smiled faintly. I didn't choose nothing, I said. I chose honesty. He was quiet. You said send the money or don't call you again, I continued. I respected your terms. A bitter laugh escaped him. I didn't think you meant it, he said. That's the danger of entitlement, I replied. It assumes other people don't have limits. Days passed. Then weeks. The formal letters arrived. He was required to cooperate, to disclose, to attend interviews. No prison sentence, not yet. But consequences all the same. His accounts were restricted, his credit monitored, his career questioned. Not ruined, but reshaped. He called me one last time after everything settled. I don't expect forgiveness, he said. I just wanted you to know I understand now. I listened. When you didn't send the money, he continued, you didn't abandon me. I waited. You stopped enabling me, he finished. Yes, I said. I hated you for it at first, he admitted. Then I hated myself. That's how growth feels, I replied. It's not comfortable, he exhaled. I don't know what happens next, he said. That's okay, I replied. Neither did I when I stopped saving you. We ended the call without ceremony. No reconciliation montage. No tidy ending. Just reality. People ask me sometimes if I regret choosing the second option. I don't. Because sending the money would have solved nothing. It would have hidden behavior that needed light. It would have delayed consequences that were already overdue. It would have taught him that threats work. Instead, I chose silence. I chose restraint. I chose to let systems do what parents sometimes can't. Draw a line that doesn't move just because someone is screaming. He yelled, "Send $50,000 or don't call me again." I chose the second option. And that choice didn't destroy him. It finally forced him to face himself.